I'm Maggie Lawson. I'm an artist here in Oakland, California, and I also have a small business called the Heirloom Chef. And in November of 2016, I collaborated with Shagai Cyrus on a project called The Secret Garden.
I'm Shagai Cyrus, and I'm also an artist and co-founder and creative director of Klozar Design.
So on November 12th, we had a launch party for Klozar San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
And basically it was a 4-course dinner that started with an appetizer and a poetry reading of Persian poetry. And by the people attending the dinner, they read the poetry.
Yeah.
And then we had a salad, a main course, and a dessert. And for each course, one of the collaborators on the project, presented about the women in our family and the stories of kind of their work lives. And so I did a performance about my grandmother, Alberta Dorn, and I talked about her kind of challenge around going back to school at the age of 30 after she had had 10 kids, and then also, you know, the conflict between her and my grandfather, and also this idea that, like, of me starting my own business and being a woman in the business world and in my, you know, the leader behind my business and in the kitchen, a chef in the kitchen. And Shagai talked about her mother and starting the business, and we showed the website. And then Marisa Manriquez, the chef, she also presented about her grandmother, who was from Chile, and she talked about her grandmother being one of the first women in her family to go to school, and talked about the dessert that she had made inspired by her grandmother's, kind of one of her grandmother's favorite desserts.
Klozar Design just started in 2014 officially from Iran and through my mom. My mother was, after I came here, like for some of the challenges, she went and learned weaving, like clean weaving, and she went to like different classes, and then like very accidentally she kind of like one of her clean was not really perfect, and she turned it to the back, and that's why like the whole Klozar thing started. Then I thought that would be really interesting to bring some of the patterns and some of the like culture, like some of the patterns and some of the motifs from different culture in Iran actually that's like fading, to bring out, and people can just take them with them. So I started to like research on different patterns, different cities with and women, and my mom like started to like gather a lot of women to start this business, and then it became official. And then I created a website for the Klozar Design, so it became like more serious actually. But one of the things that I was trying to do was like if you go to the website, you can see each bag has an identification card kind of thing that says who weaved the bag, where they weaved, and what's the pattern name. So in this case, and also it has a map where that city or village is, and also a picture of the place, one of the picture of the place. So in this case, you can kind of like understand where it is, because a lot of people like, I mean, including me, I had no idea about some of the cities and villages in Iran. It was really interesting to me also to like research about these places and the pattern that they were like fading like through time.
I wanted to use my business, this personal chef business that I have, as a platform to help launch Shagai's business, but also as a platform to talk about this other thing that I'm really interested in, which is women and labor, and how they value their own labor, and how they are able to navigate kind of the histories that they've inherited around that, you know. And so in the performance, I talked a lot about my grandmother and her challenges with going back to school and raising 10 kids while she was in school and working as a mother of 10 kids, you know. And it's just like, I'll also just create a story about it because part of me doesn't really know the actual story. You know, I just have a little bit of information from my relationship with her. But like for me, that's such a powerful story to draw on as I think about my own challenge. I'm a single woman with no kids, but I still am so. It's been really challenging to bring this business from zero, you know, and my business has been a way for me to support myself while I do these other kind of more community, kind of different, non-marketable art projects that do involve food, you know, but like it's been my means of supporting myself. So I think that, you know, I'm getting better at talking about it, but I think that what's complicated for me is they have both functional values and artistic values, and I want to actually show both. I feel really happy with what happened in the space of that dinner. I think that what was successful for me was the fact that I was able to create this platform where other women were able to share their stories as well. And I was able to connect kind of the larger ideas behind Klozar, this idea that these weavings and the patterns are passed down through generations of women specifically, and also they're a reflection of the family's history and the family's place geographically in Iran. So I wanted to like somehow create a piece that reflected that in my family, and shared my story as a way of highlighting the women in my family and kind of this similar phenomenon, right? I learned how to cook from my mother and my grandmother, and so I talk about that too, being a self-taught chef who is interpreting the recipes of my family in this place. I feel like that happened in that space, and also the visuals for me. I was really happy with. We had the dinner in this really beautiful artist loft. A friend of mine owns, and I feel like she also has this connection to her family, and there were photos of her family there. You know, people keep asking me if the dinner was successful or what happened for people in the dinner, and it's hard for me to say if I'm being 100% honest. I can't speak to exactly what happened for folks in that dinner, but I do feel like we were able to share something that they wouldn't have been able to experience had they not been in that space with us. And, you know, share it in order to create an art piece that's a reflection of those things and problematizes those things as well, this idea of creative heritage and women in business, but also share it in a way that hopefully creates some like deeper reflection on their part about their own families and the women in their lives and how they value them and how any women, you know, from their families or otherwise. That's what I wanted, was to create that kind of space.
For me, it was actually the whole project that we collaborated was like had totally like a lot of different layers. One layer, I mean, and I really liked how everything was kind of like thoughtful, even for me it was like really interesting to like go back to like see who's the name of my ancestors in a way that we printed actually in the bowls that each person brought with them. So
yeah, we have some here.
Yeah.
If you want to hand me one, there's one over there.
So that was really interesting to me. So everything was like, even the menu, it has like a pattern inside it. It was like a like totally different description. So everything was like that. Even the poems that we read in the tea thing. Yeah, this is like one of them.
This is my grandmother's name.
Yeah, so I had like a Farsi.
This is a kilim.
Yeah, this is a claimant that it has the symbol of woman actually. So like everything was kind of like thoughtful in a way that has like a lot of different layers. And also one of the things that were interested for me and Maggie was like, I'm from Iran, she's from United States, so that this kind of like political challenges that happen in a political way, like around the world, was really interested to now as an artist how we can collaborate and how we can bring the kind of like same experience of women with each other, like the stories that Maggie told and the stories that was behind what my mom is doing, or like what the weavers are doing in Iran was kind of like the same idea, and that was really interesting to bring them together and like bring them together as a culture, as a like a humanity rather than what's going on in politics.
It's so complicated, but I think kind of to speak to like the same thing that you're talking about, like when I started the Heirloom Chef, I was like, how do I make something that's meaningful to me in the world?
Yeah, exactly.
And that I think other people can gain meaning from. Like,
And
how do I do
like,
that?
Yeah,
you know?
and I feel like since we are kind of like into social practice, we really want to do something that also help, or like being helpful for other people.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like.
It's true. I mean, I don't think all social practice helps people, but I think that there is some aspect, like there is some social, right, some social aspect or social work aspect to it, and I agree. Like, I'm drawn to things that I feel like not only are socially relevant, but are like having a positive social impact.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they do both things at the same time.
Yeah.
And maybe the relevancy makes it positive for people, kind of like with our piece, like, did the diners walk away better nourished or able to like name things about Iranian and American history that I don't know, like, could we measure the results? Like, not necessarily, but I do think that we made a piece that was really socially relevant. Yeah. And also, I mean, what I haven't talked about in this piece, and for me, is like this idea of healing, right? Mm-hmm. Like that we are in a traumatic time, and that space, especially right after the election, it felt so traumatic. And so it's like, for me, working through that trauma is about being in community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.